lunch breaks, sick leave, all of those things as well. And the last thing we'll be talking about is the Fair Work Ombudsman, who is the government authority that you can contact if something's happened to you and you would like them to investigate. I've also put some other links at the end of the presentation, which we'll go into in greater detail. But buckle in, it'll be about an hour presentation, a lot of information to cover, but hopefully we'll go through it together. So basically in Australia, all workers have basic law rights and they're protected by common law. And that's in terms of their pay, their conditions, and how they should be treated at work. So this is very important for you to get your head around. And some of the main conditions are formulated into the 10 employment standards, which we're going to go through. So no matter which job you work in, there are 10 minimum standards that are essential in all careers. We're going to go through each element a little bit specifically, so hopefully this works for everyone. It is a macro, so hopefully it works out. Does everyone see maximum weekly hours? Beautiful. So maximum weekly hours, the standard maximum weekly hours per week is 38 hours. So that covers the 9 to 5, Monday to Friday normally, but there's also an option for an employer to have additional hours. So they might say to you, I need you to stay back at work for half an hour today. That's reasonable request. So that's that reasonable additional hours. But it's not reasonable to ask someone who has children or who needs childcare, can you stay back 2 or 3 hours after work because they have other pressing commitments. So the flexibility is in that reasonable term. It's only what's reasonable for a standard person who would look at a job and say, yeah, that's fair. An extra half an hour is not too imposing, but 3 or 4 hours certainly is. And that's when you get into overtime. You also have the right to request flexible working arrangements. So for those with a young child under the age of 6, or those who are caring for someone with a disability, or for those that who have just came back to work, who are on maternity leave and just came back to a role, may want more flexible working arrangements. So under the law, you're protected in those areas and you have the right to request flexible working arrangements. The other thing is parental leave. You are entitled to 12 months parental leave. That's not paid from your employer, but you can get paid parental leave through Services Australia there as well. You have the right to take 12 months parental leave, but also the right to extend it for another 12 months. And the second right to that is the right to return to the role that you were doing prior to you going on paternity leave. Now, this is something that's very interesting in Australia. It's not it was brought in by the Gillard government in 2011, and it's something that is now become a universal standard. They're looking at opportunities to divorce the association with parental leave on the female and make it unilateral, male, female, whoever the primary carer is will be able to access parental leave in the future, which will be a great step forward for equality.
Warren, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Sorry, is that applicable to casual roles or just if you are full-time or part-time?
No, it's not applicable to casuals, unfortunately, there as well. So, and that's one of the big differences with casual, which we'll get down to a little bit further. It erodes a lot of principles, the casual nature, from a paid full-time work nature there as well. So we've got to be really careful with that. And a lot of these terms will come in mainly if you're in a paid capacity in a full-time, part-time manner, but not necessarily in a casual manager. A casual work is normally if you turn up for work, you're paid during that time. Okay, a casual worker only gets paid if they do turn up to work. Annual leave, you're entitled to 4 weeks annual leave, and that's pro rata. So if you work only 1 day a week each Monday, and at the end of the year, you are entitled to 4 weeks off, but only 1 day, Monday, will be paid. If you're a full-time worker, you'll get full-time Monday to Friday leave there as well. So that's annual leave. Annual leave is also another thing that's not given to casuals. However, casuals get compensated in other ways, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. So you have the right to earn and accrue annual leave. You don't get 4 weeks annual leave the moment you start work, you accrue it. So you generally earn around 6 hours of leave a fortnight there towards your annual leave. The other one is personal carers leave. This is also bundled up into what we call sick leave or personal leave. So every year, the minimum standard is 10 days of sick leave or personal carers leave, looking after a child, looking after a parent, looking after a brother or sister, or someone in your immediate family. Compassionate leave is a little bit different, and that is, it's a very sad situation, but if someone passes away, you're entitled to 2 days per instance of compassionate leave. I don't know about you, but when my grandmother passed away, it took me way longer than 2 days to recover after her passing. So I think that sometimes an employer may give you additional days, but the minimum they're entitled to is 2 days per instance. Now, as Kate was bringing up before, compassionate leave is given to casual workers, but not paid. So they might get 2 days unpaid compassionate leave. Family and domestic violence leave is a new addition only within the last 2 years. And basically, oh, sorry, there was a pop-up question there. I'll have to pop up my chat window. That could pop up. Can you read that question out, Kate?
Yeah, the question is, how much is standard pay per hour?
Well, that's a really good question. That will be coming up in about 3 more slides, and it's changed. Recently, there was a ruling talking about minimum wage. So we'll get to that quite soon. Thanks for your question. But going back to family and domestic violence leave, there is a current law saying that employers should provide 5 days unpaid leave, and that's the minimum. So when we're looking at these national entitlement employment standards, these are the minimum obligations of an employer. They can give more, they can give 10 days domestic violence leave, 20 days domestic violence leave, but the 5 is the minimum. They can't go below that. Another one is community service leave, and that could be working for the State Fire Service or the Country Fire Association or the State Emergency Service there as well. And that gives an amount of leave and assurance that you can return back to your work. The other one is jury service leave. Jury service leave can be up to 10 days paid from your employer, but the court system subsidizes your pay while you're being sequestered or on a jury. So if you're involved in a jury and you're selected for jury service, you will get paid from your employer, and the employer will get some compensation from the court system. You normally, with jury service leave, it's not something that you plan for. A letter comes to your envelope and says that you've been selected for jury service, and it's a requirement. You have to abide by that unless you've got 1 or 2 key exemptions, but they're very hard to achieve. Long service leave. After you've been working with an employer for a period, it's 10 years nationally, but in some awards, it may have a shorter enablement period there as well. You're entitled to 0.83 of a week. So it's around 4 days leave per year of service there as well. So generally after 10 years with a company, you would get 8.3 weeks of long service leave. Long service leave is a bit different than annual leave. During long service leave, it's basically a break from your job. You've been working for 10 years. A lot of people go on a massive holiday. The requirement for long service leave is you're actually not in communication. So your employer should not contact you while you're on your long service leave. It's not illegal to do, but generally it's something that's seen as standard. You should let that person rest and relax. They've worked for 10 years. They deserve their break as well. The other thing is public holidays. We have a number of national public holidays, but also state public holidays. This year will be quite interesting. We have the grand final Friday this year. I don't know where that will fall. I don't know if we'll be getting the public holiday this year for that one, but it could be quite interesting if that comes through. But the employees have the right to be paid on public holidays if they would normally work that day. A casual worker will not be paid for public holidays unless they're rostered on during that public holiday period. And if they are working Christmas Day or Anzac Day, that's if it falls on a weekday, or Good Friday, they will get penalty rates. So they might get double time or double time and a half. Notice of termination and redundancy pay. Notice of termination, generally the employer is required to give 1 to 5 weeks notice if they terminate your employment, and that's based on how long you've been working. It's typically 1 to 4 weeks, but if you're over the age of 45, they will give you additional week notice there as well. And that's because it's much harder to move from job to job when you're a mature age worker. And the last one is a fair work information statement. When you start work, all new employees should be given a one-page statement which has all of these rules and all of these entitlements. In my experience, it's not given out very readily, but with Kate and Sarah's help today, I'm going to send you this presentation and a copy of the Fair Work Information Statement. So that way you've got a paper that you can keep at home to know your rights no matter what job that you work in. All right, so the next section we're going to talk about is an award. There used to be about 500 different awards, and awards basically cover industry. So there's a cleaning award, there's an aviation award, there's a forestry award, there's a sales award, or working in hospitality award. There's an award for pretty much any job that you can think of. And these have the industry specific requirements or industry specific loadings or penalties or requirements that that industry has that the others don't. So if you think about aged care as an example, they work 24 hours a day, so they have different loading. If you think about someone who works in a factory, maybe they work in a refrigerated environment, they'll get a cold allowance. For someone that works in a very hot environment, they'll get heat allowance there as well. For those that work cleaning the glass on skyscrapers, they get a height and a hazard allowance there as well. I don't know about you, but I'm scared of heights. So for me, I would never be a window cleaner in a high rise, but they certainly get a little bit of money to compensate for that. So all up, I believe there's about 140 different awards now. So it's simplified from 500 down to 140. And this award tells the general conditions for people that work in that area. They'll give you information about coffee breaks, tea breaks. In Australia, most awards have a 10-minute tea break for every 5 hours you work. So if you work over 5 hours, a full-time day, you'll get 2 10-minute tea breaks. Most times they are paid. As for a lunch break, the award may set out the duration of the lunch break, but typically lunch breaks aren't paid for in Australia. All right, so we were talking about before, someone talked about the minimum wage. You've caught us at a very odd time for this advice. So for the 2019 up till June the 30th, 2020, the minimum wage is $19.49 per hour, or $740.80 per week. And that's if you work a 38-hour week. But about a week ago, the Fair Work Commission met and they said that the current minimum wage is not meeting or matching inflation. So they've increased the amount. So the amount that's a minimum that you can be paid is $19.49 an hour. But after the 1st of July, the minimum wage goes up to $19.84 an hour. And it's not a really big increase. So from 49 cents, 84 cents, so you're getting basically another 35 cents. So not a huge amount of investments there as well, but it equates to about $13 extra a week. It's not a huge jump by any means, but it affects all the awards. So every award will have a minimum wage for each pay point, that 30 cents or 35 cents will be applied to each award level. So if you're paid exactly on award level, most likely your pay will go up by 30 cents. If they're paying above the award level, they're not required to pass on this 30 cents because they're already paying you above the minimum rate. But if, let's say, you worked for an employer and the employer paid you at $19.49 per hour, and in August, they've got to make sure that your rate goes up to at least the minimum. So if you're working in any job, the minimum wage in Australia is $19.84 per hour. So from the 1st of July onwards, this will be the new minimum rate. Now, it won't apply immediately on the 1st of July. It's the first full pay period after the 1st of July. Otherwise, you would get Monday and Tuesday today paid at $19.49. Then Wednesday, you would get the $19.84. So it'd be quite a nightmare to administer. So normally the first full pay period after the 1st of July, that's when the new, the 1st of July 2019, yes, it's 2020, the flyer up the top, thank you. Yeah, so from the 1st of July 2020, so this Wednesday is the 1st of July 2020. The new minimum wage is this one. Does that answer the question that someone posed before? The minimum wage? I think so. Now we get to a tricky one, is we look at national minimum wages for juniors. When you leave school, the employer can pay you at junior rates. So, and typically that is a proportion of the full-time rate. Where before we saw $19.84, a child under the age of 16 would get $7.17, which is around 30 to 40% of the full-time wage. As the child gets older, or young adults, not a child anymore, as the adolescent or the teenager gets older, the rate starts to restore until it gets to 21. Once they've hit 21 years of age, they're required to pay you at $19.84 per hour. Now you might say, that's really unusual. The minimum rate is $19.84, but young people are paid at $7.17 an hour. This is the junior rates, and it also applies to people who are on a traineeship. So if you go to McDonald's, does everyone eat at McDonald's? I hope not, but occasionally it's okay as a treat. Most of the people that work at McDonald's are on what's called a traineeship, in which case McDonald's will pay them at this lower rate per hour there as well, the lower rate per hour, but then they might run them through some training. So let's say someone is in high school, they're in year 10, and they've decided, yes, I want to work at McDonald's. They'll get around $9.22 per hour. Year 10 student, but McDonald's won't be able to just pay them $9.22 on that traineeship wage. They also have to put them through some training in order to qualify that for that part as well. So, and that's the interesting part about the trainee system. They can't pay trainee wage unless they're not contributing to a training and development program for you. Okay, so that's that one. So now we get to the different types of work. It's probably in the wrong order. I probably would have put this before the awards, but this is the Fair Works presentation. So full-time generally work 38 hours a week, and they're paid for a full week's work. The hours of start and the hours of finish, it might start at 8:30 in the morning and work till 5 p.m. In between is a 1 hour lunch break unpaid, or they might start at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock in the morning and finish at 5 p.m. And in between there is a half an hour lunch break. When you're a full-time person, you would receive entitlements like annual leave. Like we said before, you earn about 6 hours a fortnight, and you get paid personal carers leave put aside as well. Generally, you get 10 days per year, and it accrues as you work. So after working 2 months with a company, you'll probably have one and a third of a sick day or a carer's day put aside. Most employers, when you start a new job, they don't want people to access sick leave immediately. But with this new coronavirus world that we're in at the moment, if you are feeling sick, speak with your employer, tell them that you're feeling sick. The risk of infecting people is quite dangerous. So if you're working at the moment, whether it's full-time, part-time, or casual, and you fear that you may have coronavirus or you're feeling that you could infect other people, speak with a medical practitioner as soon as possible and then speak with your employer to see what opportunities they have to potentially let you access sick leave early, or maybe there's a scheme you can join. Sarah was talking that there might be a 2-week payment that the state government's prepared to, while you're infected, to compensate. Part-time, they generally work regular hours, but less than the 38 hours a week. So they might say, I work Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and every Friday they take off. Or they might work half days. They maybe work 9 till 1 each morning. Thanks, Sarah. So we'll send out this information along with the slides as well. So they receive the same benefits as full-time, but it's proportional. So if someone's a full-time worker, every year they get 4 weeks worth of full-time pay. As a part-time worker, let's say 3 days a week, they also get 4 weeks, but not of full-time pay, but of part-time pay. So they'll get 4 weeks of 3 days a week pay. Casuals don't have regular work shifts. They work on an hourly basis, and sometimes their week is varying. So they might have 20 hours one week, and they might go down to 8 hours the next. Then they might go down to 2 hours the week after, and then back up to 30 the week after that. So they have a varying of hours. But the thing with a casual worker, there is no guaranteed hours. A casual worker, they can have large amounts of works one week and almost nothing the week after. They might have a shift system or a roster system where they get more or less work there as well. They don't get paid personal carers leave or annual leave. They can take sick days off, but they're unpaid sick leave. But as a casual worker, if they have too many sick days off, they may not be available to be on call, and the employer may not want to engage with them if they're not available at a minute's notice. A casual worker is typically someone who has a very flexible work background and life background that they can do a shift and pick up a shift with minimal notice. Casuals don't get notice of termination, unlike a full-time or a part-time, which normally get a notice period depending on how long they're working. A casual won't get that notice period. The offset for it is they get more per hour. So if we went back to a previous slide where we saw that $19.80 per hour, I'll just do some quick maths, sorry about this, times 1.25. A casual worker will get $24.75 per hour on that minimum wage. So generally they get 25% more per hour, and that's to compensate them for having no set hours, not getting personal leave, not getting carers leave, not getting annual leave. The one leave that casuals do get is long service leave. So a lot of people don't realize that if you work with an employer for an extended period of time, that you're still qualified as an employee and you can get access to long service leave. And long service leave is based on the last 5 years of employment, what your average hours were, or your last 1 year of employment, whichever is the highest. So if, let's say, over the last 5 years as a casual, you average 20 hours a week, but in the last year, you've been averaging 30 hours a week, your long service leave would be 30 hours a week for that 8.3 weeks. Okay. Another type of employer is an independent contractor. So sometimes your boss might ask you to get an ABN, a business number, and they'll ask you to set up your own business and get an ABN before you come work for them. You're known as a contractor or a subcontractor. So they may set a task for you and then you give a quote. how much will I pay, you pay me if I do that thing for you. But the contract is different than an employee. An employee works set hours, set time, set day with a set rate. A contractor is a bit different. A contractor decides, do I want the job or do I not want the job? They set the rate for fixing it. So if your toilet's broken, a contractor might say, Warren, I'll pay $500 for that one. They set their own rate. Do I give the plumber his tools? No, the plumber comes with his own tools, his own equipment. He sets the rate. He sets the time. He might say, Warren, are you available at 4 o'clock next Wednesday? Hopefully not next Wednesday to fix the toilet. Hopefully it's today there as well. But they set their own rates there as well. Now, sometimes you'll work for a company as a subcontractor. So a good example of that is if you're a cleaner. Lots of people who are cleaners will subcontract to a cleaning company, in which case the rate will be negotiated with that employer who needs their facility cleaned. The new one that's popped up probably in the last 7, 8 years is the gig economy. Does anyone know what that is? So you might see them all the time on the street, picking people up, dropping people off, picking up packages, food, and dropping them off. So Uber, Didi, Ola, there's many rideshare companies, but also people that pick up food and drop food off as well. There's also people that do odd jobs through a platform called Airtasker. That's called the gig economy. And a gig economy is basically a short-term stint with a company that's not required to hire you. They're basically almost on a contractual basis. So most of the people that drive those Ubers or ride those Uber bicycles, they're paid as a contractor. They provide their own car, they provide their own bike, they buy their own safety equipment. This person in the picture here bought his own helmet, wears his own clothes, rides his own bicycle there as well. So this person is most likely a contractor. The gig economy is becoming much, much bigger in Australia as we transition to this contractor and unstable or instable work environment. So before you start a new job, speak with your boss. Ask them, am I full-time, part-time, or casual worker? Another question would be, is it a contracted role? Do I have to get an ABN? Also ask your employer what award you're being paid under. So every industry has a different award. So for our industry, Kate, Sarah, and myself, we work under the Social, Community, Housing, Disability Services Industry Award. So we work with the community services. For Anna, who I think works in education, she might have a different award there. She might have the Post-Secondary Education Award, or she may have her own agreement that she falls under. For people that work in security, they have their own security award. In construction, your own construction award. But find out what award you're under and what you're classified as, and that will help you check what pay you should be paid. Also check your duties and hours of work. It's very important for you to know what skills you need to do your role and what reasonable expected tasks you're going to be asked to do as part of your work. So in regards to pay, you should be paid for all hours that you work. So if you start at 9 and finish at 5, normally people would say, I get paid 8 hours. You don't. You get paid for hours you work. Your lunch break is unpaid unless your award or your agreement says you'll be paid over lunch, which is very rare. So typically, if you work a 9 to 5, Monday to Friday a week, you'll be paid 38 hours of that week. But be aware that when you start work, it's illegal to have unpaid work trials. So if they trial you out for 2 or 3 weeks and you don't get paid for that period, that's illegal. However, There are short task-based or skill-based trials. For instance, let's say you're going to work at a restaurant and they say, can you make this dish for me? You're demonstrating a skill. That's a skill-based trial that is unpaid. But a skill-based trial to make a dish wouldn't take more than 10 or 20 minutes, maybe even 30 minutes to demonstrate that. So typically unpaid work trials are not allowed in Australia. Another one is being given goods or service instead of pay. The main form of payment for tasks or for work in Australia is through a monetary transaction, a deposit into your bank account, a check, or sometimes even cash. You cannot be given goods in services. For instance, I know someone who worked at a bar and they got paid normally and then did an extra 4 hours, but the employer didn't pay them, just gave them alcohol. That's illegal. So you must be paid for the hours that you work. Okay, deductions. Your employer cannot take money from your pay. So you cannot take money out of your pay. If you accidentally break something while you're doing a duty, they can't deduct that from your pay. If, let's say, you work in a cash register and at the end of the day, the till is missing $50, they can't dock your pay $50 to make up for that till shortage. Or they can't deduct you if you're at a restaurant and someone leaves without paying the bill, they can't deduct that bill from your pay as well. Now, there are situations where the employer may have overpaid you. Oh, that's a really good question. So that's about volunteer work there as well. Volunteer work, there's a lot of different ways to find it. I'll be talking a bit about it at the end of my seminar, but I might just talk to you about a great site that I want you to go to. It's called Go Volunteer. So Go Volunteer is a wonderful place to go to look for work. But there's another one called Good Company, another one called Pro Bono Australia. But we'll be looking into that a little bit later. I've got some more training, which I'm going to talk to you about at the end of the seminar about volunteer. But volunteering is a great way to get yourself exposed to the Australian workplace. It's a good way to build skills. It's a great way to build networks. And even better, you might get a reference from your manager while volunteering. So I think volunteering is fantastic. Kate's sharing some websites, but we'll also share some when we send those out as well. Volunteering with Anna, who works at the AMEP program. Is that right, Anna? They have this amazing thing called the Home Tutor Scheme, I think. It's an amazing program. So if you're particularly good at an English or a subject, you can volunteer with the AMEP program and you can help someone who isn't really that skilled at that subject. It's called the Home Volunteer Scheme there as well. Yeah, so really, really fantastic volunteer opportunities, but we'll be going to a bit further into that when I propose something at the end of this session as well. So it's not okay if you don't get a pay slip. Normally in Australia, if you get paid, you must get your pay slip within 24 hours of receiving your money. So if you get a payment, you should get your pay slip within 1 day. In Australia, a lot of places are using online portals so you can visit your payslip anytime. My advice to you is download your payslips from the portal and save them somewhere on your computer. Even email them to yourself so you've got a permanent record. If you stop employment with a company, guess what they do? They sometimes stop you from viewing that employment portal. So you won't be able to see your payslips anymore. So my advice is when you get paid, download that payslip, put it somewhere on your iPad, on your iPhone, or even email it to yourself. It's not okay to have late payslips. Payslips really give you an indication of how much they've paid, how much sick leave you've taken, and it also talks how much they've given in superannuation. So I just brought that up before, sorry about that. Workers must get a payslip within 1 day. The payslip also talks about where they deposit it, where you should keep it, what kind of classification you're under as well. Really, the payslip is a really great place for you to find information about your employment with a company. So here's an example of one. It's very hard to see on this screen. I'm sorry about that. I might try and blow it up a bit. Oh, probably a bit too much there as well. But it'll basically give the employer's name, their details. The classification is really important. I might annotate that. So when you're looking at a pay slip, excuse me. So what you really want to look on your pay slip is your hourly and annual salary. It's very hard, sorry about this. Hard to do it on a mouse pad there as well. You also want to look at your gross work and your gross payment and your net payment. That is your payment before tax and your payment after tax, to see if you're being effectively taxed for your payment as well. You also want to see your status. So that's whether you're full-time, part-time, casual, and make sure you pay attention to those things. If you think it's incorrect, bring it up with your employer. It's really important for you to clarify, am I being paid the right amount? Am I classified the right amount? They're very important for you to check. Okay, there's actually a website you can go to, and this is the Pay and Conditions tool. And this is through Fair Work Australia. We'll be sharing this presentation. I think Kate and Sarah will send it out today, and it'll give you the link to this PAC tool. You can actually download this app for your phone, or you can use it through the website. So you go to the Fair Work website, log in and register, and then it'll basically give you lots of different options. You want to use the Pay and Conditions tool, the PACT tool, and that will basically give you an understanding of how much you should be paid. So if you received your pay slip from your employer and it's got your award and it's got your position, you can go to the PACT tool and see how much you should be paid, then compare it with your hourly rate that you're getting from your employer. And if it's less than that, approach your employer. If they refuse to, you go to the Fair Work Ombudsman, who may represent you in a case, and you might have some mediation and get back paid to the level that you should be paid. So there's also another great app, which is Record My Hours. There's an app that can keep a track of your hours that you've been working for evidence. And this is really important when you submit a timesheet each week, that you keep a track of the hours that you've worked, so you've got a record to match against what they've paid you. All right, we don't need to do that one. So if you go to Fair Work website, there's also a translating and interpreting button. If you click on it, it will pop up with English, but it will have about 60 different community languages. Not all the community languages. It's missing Oromo and Somali and some of the smaller groups like Korean, Chin, Karen, Tibetan, but it has many different language groups on there as well. They've also got an issue in your workplace. You can report if there's a problem there as well in your own language. Not all languages are represented, in which case it's best for you to call them as well. It also has information about working on Australia with a visa. Thank you. So working in Australia on a visa talks about the taxation rate. Depending on whether you're a permanent resident or someone on a student visa, the taxation rate increases if you're not a permanent resident. So the Fair Work has a lot of information that's on there. It's very difficult to use, but it does have an amazing amount of resources. My advice is to download the PowerPoints and the documents, the PDF documents and the Word documents. They're much easier to read than the website itself. But it's also your right to ask information about your status. It's against the law for an employer to terminate you or to fire you from a job if you're asking about pay or entitlements. So if you say to your boss, look, I'm not sure I'm being paid the right salary, and they terminate you, that's against the law. Secondly, it's against the law for you to be terminated because you called this Fair Work Ombudsman. So one of your working rights is the right to question how much you've paid. It's not seen as a problem, it's not disruptive, it's not against the law to ask questions about how much money you should be earning. So here's the Fair Work website. Kate's done a wonderful job and put them in the chat window, but on the bottom of this page, it'll have the different websites for you to go to, fairwork.gov.au. There's also got the languages pages there as well. You can ring them up on the info line, but in my experience with calling the info line, it might take half an hour to an hour to be connected. So you've got to be very patient in a nice quiet room with the kids, hopefully somewhere looked after, of course, in another room, so that way you can have a nice conversation with them as well. You can also send email, but that's also not as responsive. But the website has a lot of info for you. They also provide information in multiple languages. Not every language is represented, but there's some other services that you can utilize. JobWatch is a nationwide program, which is basically has a lot of resources about your rights, your employment rights, your rights to representation, sexual harassment, workplace bullying, has many, many fact sheets and tip sheets on there. So visit jobwatch.org.au. Another one is a community legal centre, and this one's Springvale Monash Legal Services. There is also one at Monash University in Caulfield, but they don't seem to cover employment law. But this is a great one for you to ring up. Springvale Monash Legal Service. They typically only give employment law or advice on jobs 1 day a week, so you'll have to find out what's the best day to call. It's on their website. And the other one is the Migrant Workers Centre. They presented in the second week of this training seminar, I think. Is that right? Yeah, so this one here is a union representing those who have migrated to Australia there as well. Union membership isn't compulsory in Australia, but if you feel that you would like to get a benefit from joining them, by all means, feel free to do so. Okay, now the other thing is, this seminar went really, really quickly. It's a lot of information to take in a very short amount of time. Now, I was the first guest speaker all the way back at the start of June, and I was promoting a free skills for the workforce training. We run 3-hour training sessions on career guidance, resume design, finding and applying for jobs, interview prep, and the last one is workplace rights, where I go into greater detail about what we talked about today, and it's a lot more participative as well. So if you'd like to come along to that, by all means, I'm going to send out an invitation to each of you. Kate, if with your permission, I might contact each of you. The first session is actually this Wednesday, and we're talking about career guidance. There is no, on the online format, we have no maximum class size. So if you feel that you would like information on any of these topics, by all means, come to my series of webinar, and Kate and Sarah will share those registration forms a bit later when they send an email as well. All right, so really what I tried to do with these seminars is go into much greater detail focused on your career, or ask you specific questions that relate to you. We can even do a mock interview online, those kind of things as well. So everyone else can watch, we can answer questions and then ask the group, how would you have answered that differently as well? So it's sort of like a training course, but run exclusively online. But if you're interested, by all means, please follow through with me. And that starts this Wednesday. That concludes our training seminar. I'm sorry, it's really, really dense today. A lot of information to cover. Much of it will be sent through to you today. But if anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer. No questions? Not a problem. So what I would say is, coming into this new world that we're living in now, yeah, um, uh, coming into this new world now that we're living in, employment rights is going to be on a focus in Australia. Jobs are getting harder and harder to apply for. I posted a job through our own company, and already we received about 200 people apply for this English language tutor. So a very small role, typically 4 or 5 hours a week, but getting hundreds and hundreds of applications. So my advice in this coronavirus world is to attend free training. You can visit some great resources like FutureLearn, Coursera. You can volunteer with the AMEP programs as well. Try and do as much volunteering, skills development, training as you can while we're all at our homes in this isolated period. Build your skills, make yourself more employable by keeping engaged and doing free training where you can. And that's not just a sales for my own course, it's completely free, but that's to join the AMEP programs, that's to join other programs. Keep engaged, keep developing your skills is the most vital thing for you to do. Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Warren. That was great. Thank you.
It went much quicker than I anticipated. So, yeah, so if there's any questions, by all means, you can send an email through to me. I'm going to be sending all the information from today through to Kate, including my course coming up soon. If you want to come along, that's great. There's plenty of spaces. I can host up to 500 people. So yeah, plenty of opportunity. So remember,
you, Warren.
yeah, you're very welcome. Thanks, Anna. If you have any questions, by all means, send them through to Sarah, Kate, and myself, and we're happy to answer those as well. It can be very tricky to talk about pay in front of a group of 7 or 8 other people. So we really do appreciate privacy and confidentiality. So if you've got something private, by all means, send it through to us and we'll do our best to connect you with the right service for that. Okay.
Thanks, Warren. Thanks
everyone
everyone for coming. And yeah, I'll email through the links and things. Nice to see everyone. Thanks.
All right, thanks.
You.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.